Welcome, dear dreamer, settle in now, wherever you are. In your bed, in your chair, wrapped in a soft blanket. Let the quiet of the night gather around you like a warm cloak gently draped over your shoulders. Outside, the world has slowed to a hush. The hum of the evening fades into distance, and only the steady rhythm of your breath remains. A tide rising and falling, carrying you softly toward rest. Tonight we travel back in time, not to the clamor of battle, nor to the thunder of hooves across the plains, but to the quiet corners of history, the forgotten pauses between great moments. Or don't let the title fool you. This isn't a tale of conquest or pride. It's a story of stillness, hiding inside the noise, of a young dreamer who once looked upon the stars and felt, perhaps as you do now, the smallness and beauty of being alive. Breathe in and let that thought rest in you. Breathe out and feel the day slip quietly away. Far away in the soft light of dawn, the land of Macedonia stirs. Mist curls over the hills, and olive trees sway gently, their silver leaves whispering secrets to the morning air. A young boy wakes, not yet a conqueror, not yet the great, just Alexander. He blinks at the golden light spilling through the window, listens to the distant call of doves, and feels the cool stone floor beneath his bare feet. Outside, the horizon glows with promise. Inside, his heart hums with quiet wonder. His teacher, Aristotle, waits with scrolls and ink, speaking softly of stars, of thought, of the shape of the world. The boy listens, his eyes wide, but soon his mind drifts to the window, to the faraway shimmer of lands he's never seen. He imagines deserts that stretch like oceans, and rivers that glitter under foreign suns, not yet realizing that one day his footsteps will fall upon those very sands. But that is for later. For now, the boy is still, a dreamer in the dawn, his story only just beginning. So breathe deeply and let the calm of this ancient morning settle over you. You are safe here, in the hush of time's first whisper, and our journey, gentle and slow, is only beginning. Long before the world knew his name, before crowns and conquests, before the marble statues and faded legends, there was simply a boy. His name was Alexander. And on quiet mornings in the land of Macedon, the sun rose gently over hills of olive green, casting threads of gold across the small palace where he slept. Outside, the air was sweet with the scent of pine and soil after dawn. Birds called lazily from the trees, their songs carrying over the still valley like distant bells. Inside, a curtain stirred in the breeze. The room was simple, stone walls cool to the touch, a wooden table, a scattering of scrolls and ink pots, and a sleeping boy wrapped in linen, his breathing soft and slow. He did not yet know of empires. He dreamed instead of horses running through endless fields, their manes like ribbons of cloud. He dreamed of stars drifting in wide circles above him, ancient lights whispering secrets of places he could not name. When he woke, the world was soft and golden. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, the way all children do when pulled from the warmth of sleep. Somewhere in the courtyard, he could hear water trickling into a basin, a steady, calming rhythm that filled the air. He stood and stretched, feeling the stone floor cool beneath his feet. For a long while, he simply stood by the window, watching the light gather across the hills. The palace was alive in its own quiet way. A murmur of footsteps, a rustle of robes, the faint clatter of pottery from the kitchens below. He could smell bread baking, and it made him smile. Soon, a soft knock came at the door. His tutor, Aristotle, entered, robes trailing like mist across the floor, eyes gentle behind the weight of thought. He greeted Alexander not as a prince, but as a curious mind ready to learn. Their lessons were slow, deliberate, peaceful. They spoke of stars, of how they burned with patient light, each one older than memory. They spoke of the shapes of the earth, the flow of rivers, and the strange way wind could cross mountains unseen. The boy listened quietly, his chin resting in his hand. Eyes drifting toward the open sky outside, the sunlight glinted on the ink pots, turning them to pools of amber. Sometimes he would ask a question so small, so gentle, that even the great philosopher would pause. "Do stars ever sleep?" he once asked. Aristotle smiled. "Not as we do," he said softly. "They shine even when we close our eyes," and perhaps that comforted the boy. To know that even in the dark, something out there was always awake, always watching kindly from afar. When their lessons ended, Alexander would wander down to the stables. The smell of hay and leather met him like an old friend. There, among the horses, he found a kind of peace that no scroll could teach. One horse in particular, Bucephalus, stood tall and proud, yet nervous of shadows. Others feared him, but Alexander did not. He approached slowly, whispering to the animal in a voice as calm as the morning air. The great horse pawed the ground, its breath a warm mist against the boy's hands. But Alexander did not pull away. He simply waited, waited until the horse grew still, until trust bloomed like dawn breaking. That was his gift, not force, not command, but patience. And as the days passed, boy and horse became one rhythm, one heartbeat beneath the Macedonian sun. At night, when the sky deepened into velvet, Alexander would lie on his back in the courtyard, his eyes tracing constellations. The stars shimmered quietly above him, each one a pinprick of forever. He imagined walking among them, his feet touching clouds, his hands brushing through the cold air of infinity. He thought about the maps his father studied. Those fragile lines drawn across parchment, naming lands he had never seen. He wondered what lay beyond them. Were there people there who dreamed as he did? Were there children who stared at the same stars, asking the same quiet questions of the sky? He didn't know then that his name would one day fill those maps. He didn't know he would ride through deserts, cross rivers that shimmered like mirrors, or gaze upon cities that gleamed brighter than the dawn. All he knew in this still, golden moment was wonder. And maybe that is how greatness truly begins, not with the roar of armies, but with the hush of a single breath, a quiet curiosity stirring in the heart. So as you listen now, let your own thoughts drift like clouds above that ancient land. Let the hum of the world fade away, and feel the gentle pull of time unwinding. Breathe in and imagine the scent of olive trees in the morning light. Breathe out and let the years dissolve, leaving only calm, and the soft rhythm of history half asleep. Somewhere in the distance, a boy closes his eyes again, and the stars watch over him as they watch over you. And here, in this quiet moment between dreams, the story of Alexander the Great rests in stillness once more. If this story has begun to bring you peace, take a moment to join our circle of dreamers here on ZYSAM Peace Torais. Every night we journey together into rest and calm. Your dreams are welcome here. The years moved softly, like the turning of silk between gentle fingers. The boy from Macedon grew taller, his voice deeper, his eyes clearer. Yet within him the same quiet spark of curiosity remained. The world around him had begun to stir, whispering of purpose, of places far beyond the horizon. One dawn the palace awoke to the sound of movement, boots against stone, horses breathing mist into the cool air, banners fluttering lazily in the pale light. Alexander stood among them, his cloak still smelling faintly of the cedar chests where it had been kept. The morning was bright and gentle, the kind of light that softens every edge. He watched as men packed food and water, as armor was lifted, as the hum of readiness rippled like a low song. He did not yet feel like a conqueror, only a traveler about to take his first steps into a story that seemed both ancient and new. The air was cool with promise. The grass, damp from the night's dew, sparkled as the sun touched it. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd's flute played a wandering tune, thin and tender as thread. Alexander placed a hand on Bucephalus' neck, his faithful companion since boyhood. The horse snorted softly, shifting his weight, and Alexander smiled, whispering words of calm. He mounted, and for a long moment he did not move. He simply watched the hills rise before him, their slopes fading into a pale morning haze. Then, with a slow breath, he gave the signal to begin. The first march was not glorious nor grand. It was slow, steady, rhythmic, like breathing, like the steady pulse of the earth beneath their feet. The soldiers' footsteps pressed into the dirt roads, leaving shallow imprints that the wind would later erase. Dust curled around their ankles, dancing in the light. Birds wheeled lazily overhead, their shadows gliding over helmets and spears. The sound of marching blended into a soft hum, a lullaby of movement and earth, boots, wind, the faint jingle of metal, the steady beat of hoofs. Alexander rode near the front, but his thoughts wandered far behind. He thought of his mother, of the gardens that once filled the palace air with lavender and thyme. He thought of Aristotle and the calm patience in his voice when he spoke of virtue and reason. And he thought quietly of the stars. Even now, beneath the daylight, he could imagine them waiting beyond the sky, watchful, unblinking, endless. By midday, the heat had begun to rise. The air shimmered, and the road stretched endlessly before them, a ribbon of pale dust. Yet there was no rush, only rhythm and the slow song of time. When they stopped to rest, the soldiers found shade beneath sparse olive trees. They ate bread softened with water and lay back against their packs, eyes half closed. Alexander dismounted and walked to the edge of a nearby stream. The water moved gently, clear and cold as polished glass. He knelt, cupping his hands to drink, and watched as sunlight scattered into ripples across the surface. The sound was soothing, the murmur of water over stone, steady and timeless. He thought of how many rivers had carried the reflections of travelers before him. How many faces had looked into that shimmer and seen their own beginnings. Nearby, Bucephalus grazed in silence, tail flicking lazily at flies. Alexander leaned back against a tree, closed his eyes, and simply breathed. He could hear everything, the rustle of leaves, the faint whisper of distant voices, the heartbeat of the world. It was then he realized something quiet and beautiful, that the road itself was a kind of teacher, that the movement the stillness. The space between each step was as sacred as any lesson he had learned in marble halls. As afternoon turned to evening, they rose again. The sky stretched wide, painted with the soft hues of rose and amber. The air smelled faintly of dust and thyme. The rhythm began again, boots, wind, silence, sky. From a hilltop, Alexander looked back over the long trail behind them. It was as if the earth itself had drawn a soft line through time, marking the quiet beginning of something far greater than any crown. He did not know where the path would end, and perhaps for now he did not need to. The light dimmed. The world began to cool. In the distance the first stars blinked awake, their silver light brushing softly over the sleeping landscape. The soldiers made camp, tents rising like gentle shadows in the dusk. Fires flickered, their smoke curling upward in slow, spiraling shapes. Laughter hummed softly between men, low and tired but warm. Someone plucked at a lyre, the melody slow and tender. Alexander sat a little apart, his hands resting loosely on his knees. The sky deepened into indigo. He watched the stars appear, one by one, each a small, eternal flame. He thought again of that question he had once asked his teacher. Do stars ever sleep? And he smiled faintly in the firelight, because now, surrounded by men drifting toward slumber, by the breath of the earth and the murmur of wind through the grass, he understood. Perhaps they didn't. Perhaps their waking was his resting, their silence his peace. The night grew still, the fire's glow softened, and the air filled with the deep calm that comes before sleep. Alexander lay back, the cool ground beneath him, the sky vast and endless above. He closed his eyes and let the hum of the world fade away. And there, between waking and dreaming, the first march dissolved into stillness, a gentle rhythm carrying him toward the next horizon, toward whatever waited in the golden quiet of tomorrow. The morning came quietly. A pale silver light spilled across the camp, touching the edges of tents, catching in the threads of damp canvas, and turning every dew drop into a tiny, sleeping star. The men stirred slowly, their movements soft and unhurried, a rustle of fabric, the low crackle of rekindled fire, the faint murmur of voices waking to another day. Alexander sat beside the embers, hands outstretched toward the warmth. The coals glowed faintly, a soft orange heartbeat in the cool dawn air. Above him the sky unfolded like silk, from silver to pale blue, from night into day. The world around him was vast, a stretch of land that seemed to breathe. Grasses bent gently beneath the wind, and the scent of the morning carried dust and the faint sweetness of wild herbs crushed underfoot. They began again, moving eastward. The rhythm of the march was slower now, not the drive of conquest, but the flow of a journey without haste. The sound of boots and hoofs blended with the sighing of the wind. An endless lullaby, rising and falling, soft as a dream half remembered. The path wound through rolling plains and river valleys, where the water glittered like sheets of glass beneath the sun. At times, they passed through small villages, simple stone homes, smoke curling from chimneys, children standing barefoot by the roadside, their laughter light as bird song. Alexander would lift a hand in greeting, and the villagers bowed gently in return, not out of fear, but in that quiet, ancient way people acknowledge travelers on a long road. A gesture of peace, a wish for safe passage. Days slipped by like flowing water. The air grew warmer, the horizon farther. The songs of the soldiers changed, becoming slower, deeper, woven with the rhythm of their steps. In the still afternoons, the heat shimmered on the open plains. Even Bucephalus slowed, his breath steady, his hooves tapping softly against the earth. Sometimes Alexander rode alone ahead of the column, seeking the quiet. He would pause at the crest of a hill and let his eyes wander over the land. From up there the world looked eternal, a patchwork of gold and green and shadow. The rivers glinting like silver threads, stitched through the heart of the earth. He could almost feel the pulse of the world beneath him. The deep hum of life, ancient and patient and vast. There was no sound of swords or shouting here, only the whisper of the breeze in the tall grass, the flutter of small wings as birds rose and settled again. He felt something strange then, not pride, not hunger for glory, but a kind of stillness, a knowing that the world did not need to be conquered, only understood. He breathed it in, this quiet peace, as though it were the air itself. When the evening came, the desert met them like a sleeping sea. The sands stretched endless in every direction, rippled and golden beneath the fading light. The men made camp among the dunes. The air cooled quickly, and a hush settled over them, the kind of silence that fills the space between heartbeats. Alexander walked a short distance away, to where the last light of the sun lingered on the curve of the sand. He watched as the sky deepened into rose, then indigo. The stars appeared again, slowly at first, then all at once. A million gentle eyes above the earth. He sat and traced them with his gaze, one by one, until they blurred into soft silver mist. His thoughts drifted, like the wind moving over the dunes. He thought of home, of the olive groves of Macedon, of the soft sound of his mother's voice telling him stories before sleep. The desert was quiet, but it was not empty. It hummed, a low, living music made of air and sand and memory. He closed his eyes, listening. The rhythm of breathing, the horses, the earths, all melted into one. Somewhere far behind, the campfires flickered like fallen stars. The men were asleep, their dreams wrapped in the hush of the desert night. And Alexander, too, felt sleep pulling gently at the edges of his mind. He lay back on the sand, its coolness a balm against his skin, and looked up at the sky one last time. He wondered, had those same stars looked down upon the travelers before him? Had they watched shepherds, wanderers, and dreamers alike, each one crossing these lands in quiet reverence? He thought perhaps they had. He smiled faintly, his body heavy with calm, his heart light as the drifting wind. Somewhere deep inside, he felt a whisper of understanding, that the journey itself was not a race toward greatness, but a long, slow song meant to be listened to. And so he listened, the desert exhaled, the night deepened, and the stars, those patient old companions, kept their gentle watch as Alexander drifted softly into dreams. The sand shifted quietly around him, the world breathing in perfect time. A steady rhythm, a peaceful pulse, a lullaby written in wind and starlight. If you're still awake, let your breath slow now, like the calm of that desert night. If this story brings you peace, remember to join our circle of dreamers at Kiozi Eam Pistoies, where every night we journey together into rest and calm. The days passed gently, as if time itself had grown tired of keeping count. The sun rose and fell in its endless rhythm. and the land changed shape beneath the travelers. Plains giving way to valleys, valleys softening into the open vastness of sky. Each morning began the same way, the low murmur of waking voices, the steady flicker of fires being rekindled, and the soft jingle of bridles in the half-light. But one morning the wind felt different. It came not as a breeze, but as a whisper that carried a warning, a cool edge, a scent of rain far beyond the horizon. The sky, once pale and endless, grew heavy with cloud. Shadows rolled across the land like slow waves. By noon the first droplets began to fall, small, hesitant, like someone drumming softly on the canvas of the world. Alexander tilted his head to the sky. He watched the clouds gather, their shapes billowing and deepening, and felt the first touch of rain on his skin. The men hurried to cover their belongings, their laughter low and wary, the kind of laughter that always follows surprise. But Alexander did not rush. He sat astride Bucephalus, letting the rain bead on his armor and fall through his hair like threads of silver. He found comfort in the sound, the steady rhythm, the cool against the warmth of his skin, the way the land itself seemed to sigh in relief. Soon the rain thickened, the air filled with its song, 1,000 tiny whispers soft and unending. The march slowed, boots sank into wet earth, and the world turned to mist and motion. Somewhere behind him, someone began to hum, a low, wordless tune that carried gently through the downpour. Others joined, their voices blending with the rain until it was impossible to tell where human song ended and nature's began. The sound soothed him. It reminded him of the songs his mother used to hum. When storms rolled over Macedon, her voice a calm anchor in the wind. He closed his eyes for a moment and simply listened. The storm, fierce as it was, had its own beauty, its own peace. It was not an enemy to fight, but a breath to share. As evening neared, the rain began to soften. The thunder that once rumbled deep in the clouds moved farther away, its echo fading into the folds of the earth. The world slowed again. The men made camp under dripping trees, their fires small and flickering, sending curls of steam into the cool air. Alexander walked among them, his cloak damp, his hands brushing against leaves that glittered with rain. He paused beside a puddle where ripples spread outward with every drop that fell. The reflections trembled, sky and firelight, branches and stars, a living painting made by water and time. He knelt and touched the surface, watching the ripples fade back to stillness. And as he did, he thought of all the storms he had weathered, the battles of heart, of mind, of silence and distance. Each one had left a mark, a ring upon the surface of who he was, and yet always the ripples faded and stillness returned. He realized then that peace was not the absence of storms, but the quiet found within them. He looked up, and through the thinning clouds the moon appeared, soft, round, serene. Its light spilled over the soaked earth, turning every droplet to silver. The camp fell silent. The men, weary from the march, lay down one by one, their breaths deep and even, their dreams blending with the sound of dripping leaves. Alexander remained awake a little longer. He sat by the dying fire, watching the last flames lick softly at the wet wood. The smell of smoke and rain mingled, earthy, grounding, timeless. He thought of all the people who had once sat beneath the same sky, listening to storms that passed as all things pass. He thought of how every life, Every journey was just another ripple in a vast and endless sea. A deep calm filled him then, the kind that comes only after the rain. He lay back on the damp grass, the earth cool and solid beneath him. The storm was gone, but its music lingered in the rhythm of his breath. The moon watched over him gentle and still, and in that quiet hour between wakefulness and sleep, Alexander felt as though the whole world was breathing with him. The land, the air, the water, all swaying in perfect, peaceful rhythm. His thoughts grew softer, slower, drifting like clouds over an endless sky. He thought, just before sleep claimed him, that perhaps the greatest power was not found in the storm, nor in victory, but in learning how to be still when the world is loud. He exhaled. The sound melted into the night, and soon the camp was filled only with the sound of rest, the breath of men and earth and dream moving together in silence. The years drifted like clouds across an endless sky. The long marches, the rivers crossed, the cities built, all of it softened in memory, like paint fading gently on an old canvas. Alexander, once the restless dreamer of Macedon, was no longer the boy who stared in wonder at the stars. He had seen too many skies, walked too many roads, yet inside him, beneath the weight of victories and distance, the same quiet heart still beat, steady, searching kind. The wind carried a familiar scent that morning, wild herbs, olive trees, and cool earth after rain. It felt like home. It was home. His army, now smaller, quieter, gentler than before, had reached the western hills. The path wound upward, the land turning green again after so many miles of sand and stone. Bucephalus, his old companion, walked carefully beside him, his pace slower now, his once dark mane streaked with silver. Alexander ran a hand through it, whispering softly, words not of command, but of gratitude. The air grew cooler as they climbed, the wind brushing softly against their faces. And there at last, beyond the ridge, lay the valley of Macedon. It was unchanged. The same rolling fields, the same shimmer of river under sunlight, the same hum of bees over the meadows. It was as though the land itself had waited, patient and forgiving, for its wandering son to return. He dismounted and stood still for a long time, his eyes tracing the horizon, his heart slowing to the rhythm of the wind. The men behind him were quiet too. They did not cheer. They did not shout. They simply breathed in the air of home and felt the peace that comes when a journey finds its rest. Alexander walked down into the fields alone. The grasses brushed softly against his hands. Somewhere nearby, a stream whispered through the rocks, its voice clear and light. He knelt beside it and cupped the cool water in his hands. It tasted of childhood, of simpler days, of the lessons under olive trees, of laughter echoing against the stone walls of the old palace. He smiled faintly. He had chased the edge of the world only to find it waiting for him here in the stillness of his beginning. He sat by the stream for a long while, watching the sun sink slowly through the haze. The light softened, turning everything to gold and rose. Insects drifted lazily through the air, and the sound of distant bells floated gently from the village below. Everything around him seemed slower, as if time itself had paused to breathe. He thought of all he had carried, not only the weight of his name, but the stories, the faces, the quiet moments that had shaped him. He thought of the desert winds, of the songs sung beneath rain. of the stars that had kept watch through every night. And most of all, he thought of the peace that had always waited, not at the end of the road, but within it. The air grew cool. The sky deepened to blue and then to velvet. He could see the first stars appearing again, the same that had watched over him as a child. A shepherd's fire flickered in the valley. The sound of sheep bells drifted upward, soft, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Alexander closed his eyes. He let the memory of all his travels melt into the hum of the earth. He realized then that he no longer wished to move forward, no longer needed to. The world, vast and bright and full of mystery, was already here. In the scent of the fields, the sound of running water, the quiet warmth of belonging. He lay back against the soft grass. The stars shimmered above him, each one glowing faintly, like candles in the endless dark. He felt the earth beneath him, steady and alive, and breathed out slowly, as though returning a long held sigh to the world. The wind moved through the trees, carrying whispers of old stories, not of conquest, but of return. And in that quiet hour, Alexander, who had seen the edges of the world, became simply a man again, a dreamer resting under the same sky he once admired as a boy. He smiled once more, a small, contented smile, and let his eyes close. The night settled gently around him, cool and fragrant, and the world seemed to hold its breath, softly, reverently, as the great wanderer finally came home, not in triumph, but in peace. The night deepened. The world grew hushed. Somewhere in the valley, the last fires dimmed, their smoke rising in thin, delicate spirals toward the stars. The river murmured softly, its surface glimmering with silver light. And there, beneath that ancient sky, Alexander lay in stillness, his armor set aside, his thoughts quiet and light as feathers. He had walked so far, seen so much, and at last he had learned what no map could show him. That peace was not waiting at the edge of the world, but resting quietly within every moment, every breath. The wind brushed through the grass, cool and gentle, like the hand of time itself, passing over the face of the earth. Above, the stars pulsed softly in the dark. The same stars that had watched him as a boy, the same that had guided him through deserts and rain. They shimmered now, not as distant mysteries, but as old friends keeping silent watch. He could almost hear their song, a faint, endless lullaby woven through the fabric of the universe. It was the song of rivers, of hearts, of quiet lives unfolding under the same eternal light. He let the sound carry him, as one lets the tide carry a drifting boat. In his mind, the faces of his life passed gently. His mother's kind eyes, Aristotle's patient smile, the laughter of his men around a campfire, the steady breath of Bucephalus beside him on the long roads. All of them blended together now, not as memories of things gone, but as the very air that surrounded him. Soft, warm, infinite. He breathed in, and the world breathed with him. He breathed out, and the world exhaled its quiet blessing. There was nothing left to chase, nothing left to prove. Only this, the tender stillness of the earth, the patient glow of the stars, and the peace that fills the spaces between heartbeats. The night wrapped itself around him, a dark velvet cloak lined with starlight. The sounds of the valley faded one by one. The whisper of water, the hum of crickets, the sigh of the wind through the grass. Soon there was only silence, a soft, living silence, the kind that makes the soul feel weightless. Alexander smiled once more. He was no longer the great, no longer the conqueror or the king. He was simply a dreamer resting in the arms of the world. The stars shimmered above him, bright and eternal. And in that vast, gentle forever, his story melted into the quiet, becoming part of the endless hum of life itself. You can feel it too, can't you? That same quiet pulse beneath your own breath, that same steady rhythm that has always been there, ancient, comforting, calm. Let it guide you now. Let your thoughts loosen, like leaves floating on a slow river. Let your body sink deeper into softness, your breath falling into perfect rhythm with the night. You are safe here. The world is vast and kind, and tonight it holds you gently in its care. The story fades now, like candlelight slowly dimming, like waves retreating softly back to the sea. You need not hold on to anything. Let go. Drift. Rest. Sleep comes quietly, as it once came to the dreamer beneath the stars. And as you drift away, remember, you too are part of this gentle forever, a light among lights, a breath among breaths, a dream within the endless night. Before you drift completely into sleep, remember this truth, dear dreamer. You are not alone in this quiet world of dreams. Subscribe to COSAM Stories, and let your nights be filled with peace, one story at a time. Good night. May your dreams be deep, your heart be light, and your rest unbroken, until the morning softly calls you home. Before you drift away, remember, you're not alone in this quiet world of dreams. Subscribe to COSAM Stories and let your nights be filled with peace, one story at a time. Good night, dear dreamer. May your rest be deep and your heart light as dawn.